Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sales Chatter, the only logistics podcast that's out there with the mission of trying to get 10,000 reps to hit a million GP. I'm your co-host, Ryan Mohammed. I got the amazing man, my main man, the CEO, president of RGTX Logistics Solutions, Jeff Dickinson. How you doing this morning, brother?
Good, buddy. How about yourself, man? You
I'm
ready,
doing good,
ready to do some ad hocing today?
Oh, do we ever not? That's awesome. So, we got a jam-packed episode today. Let's get right into it.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
And there we go. It's awesome. Jeff, I'm Canadian, so I don't really pay attention too much. Like American football is not really my thing, but it's hard to ignore what happened last night. That thumping that happened. Can you tell the audience, because that's actually playing into our episode for today a little bit. But what happened last night, Jeff?
TCU didn't show up. I mean, the game was over before it started. I mean, it was a pounding. I mean, listen, I've seen a lot of collegiate football in my time, and I've never seen any beating like that. And the thing that was most amazing, and it's almost like in logistics as well, they didn't stop. They had no plan. They wanted to keep scoring. Their main goal and objective was to get a goal and score, regardless of what the score was. It wasn't about that. It was just being completely dominant, off the chain, dominant. Unbelievable. I picked TCU because I saw the last game and I really thought that, they had a outside ballpark chance. But I mean, going back to back for Georgia, national championships, the big question today is, can they do the trifecta? Can they do it next year? I mean,
Is any other players going to declare for the draft, or do you think they're going to have the same team intact for next
year? I
don't
know. I haven't been following. I have not been following that closely. But I mean, if there's a college out there to be called the GOAT, Georgia is it.
It's amazing to see, and like I said, it's crazy to see that, just dominance at the highest level, like high performance logistics, high performance sports, and that's even more so there. And we've been talking about training, not training. We've been talking about planning and mindset yesterday, and when I saw the score today, I was like, you know what? Something ticked. They had a playbook that they ran, offense and defense, special teams as well, that they just executed, right? It's nothing different that Georgia came out and did completely different in yesterday's game compared to all the previous games, right? They've set with their coordinators, with their head coach and all that stuff. And, I think it's a great conversation to have about basically building out your logistics playbook as you've gotten out of training, right? Jeff, let's have some fun today. If you were to build your logistics playbook, either as manager or as a sales rep, or even operations, what would be in your playbook?
Well, I definitely want to hire people smarter than myself. That's for sure. I mean, because you're only as good as the people that are underneath you, or beside you, I should say. I hate that, underneath you. It's so demeaning because you rely so much on the people that are sitting in those seats in the trenches day in and day out. So I think, number one, that's the biggest thing as well. And I wouldn't necessarily hire for skill per se. I would rather hire for drive, ambition, determination, where the people that you put in those seats want to succeed. I think that's the biggest part of any great operation or business, is that you have the right people with the right mindset sitting in those seats that want to help you move the peanut forward. Skill can always be taught later on, and that's what a good leader does, right? Mentor, coach, develop their subordinates, show them the ropes, identify problems and ask them how they resolve. I mean, all that different kinds of stuff. That's I think is key in planning on making things work in the best way possible.
And
How
one
about
thing,
you? I mean,
yeah,
what?
I agree with that completely because you set up the right people in the right spots. When we're kind of sticking with this football theme, it's like nobody creates a play and like on the fly. They don't say, "Hey, let's run this play," because you're in charge of so many people on the field. Sorry, so you're actually kind of testing. You test and practice. You get the right people within you, and then you're always kind of like, okay, how can I have those SMEs like you always kind of talk about to basically move? Let's say we're talking about the football or your logistics career forward, and I think when you look at companies that we had Scott on last Tuesday and they have their 12-week training program, that's their
Yes,
playbook. You
that
think about
is.
that playbook, right? You're sure that they're going to give them material and it's tested and true, but they might make some audibles as they kind of go along. So I think like it's really important, especially when you kind of come out of training. You need to talk about your offensive because I feel like you need to be full on offense when you kind of start to kind of build your carrier base, your prospecting base, your customer base, and even your ops base too to figure out which pods work for you. So I
And
think like
here's the
when it comes
biggest
to
thing. Yeah, here's the biggest thing that's missing there. And we are talking planning, right?
yep,
What do teams do to plan for their game? What do they do? And
yep,
it's what all logistics and freight brokers and brokerages should do as well. It's the same thing. Do you know what they do?
let the crowd know.
They study the opposing team. They get that knowledge. They look at their plays. They understand what plays are going to be in certain formations and stuff. Well, isn't that the same thing when you're reaching out to prospects? You want to gain that knowledge. You want to understand who they are, what they do.
Yep.
And that's how you become successful. You get that one step up, So that's part of the planning as well. Planning to succeed is to get the one up on the opponent so that you can overperform what they're doing. That's the whole key there. Absolutely.
And the cool thing about it too is that when we're kind of looking at the football analogy too, it's just if you treat every customer and every opportunity like the Super Bowl, that's where you kind of see like you said, you can work on your niches, you work on things, but gold really comes in. You treat it with that planning. And what I love about the fall you're familiar with as well is that when you go into the Super Bowl, they have 2 weeks off. Every in the season is 1 week off, but they have the Pro Bowl and they got 2 weeks to really study and go and perform at the highest level. So you're right by
Yep.
saying that, hey, let's make sure that we're ensuring that everyone is like studying the other playbook, seeing what they're doing and what they run. Because I'll tell you this, Jeff, if my competitor is telling the same prospect that we're going after that, hey, they got trucks in their area, God bless. I'm hitting that return for a touchdown every single time, because it's just you kind of learn from experience and kind of go from there. And I think the one good thing as we're kind of looking at it, we look at, hey, managers, they're usually some of the top sales performers, they become managers. And we look at that as football coordinators becoming head coaches and understanding their playbooks and kind of things like that. What do you look at, like as you mentioned, you talked about the teams actually working together. What do you look at as your defensive kind of playbook, if there is one? Are you kind of like on offensive or kind of defensive in terms of your planning?
Well, the defense is basically what is being said, for instance, on a phone call when you're
Mhm.
talking to a prospect, right? Um, you start on the offense as the questioning and the conversation moves forward. You're going to find yourself on defense. Okay, what are you going to do? How are you going to play the game? What value are you going to bring to the table that's going to force the opponent to, in an actionable thing, right, to respond to what you have in place. It's the same thing. I mean, when you think about any kind of management team or anything, they're always working on developing and planning their best practices on how to move forward. And that's how it's so relative to what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're kind of always looking at that planning. So the conversations that we had yesterday were just basically continuing on from what we were talking about yesterday. And I think one thing that kind of came up was like, hey, you've got to understand as a leader where you want to kind of put your soldiers and be in the trenches with them and let them learn from that experience before they even make that first phone call and things like that. In what ways can a leader, specifically in the planning stage, share with their teammates their playbooks and what kind of works with them for beneficial success essentially?
Yeah, and that really comes down to the experience level of the manager that's in place. The more experience that an individual have, the more what if scenarios they can bring to the table to pre-plan, as far as what happens if this happened. How are you going to respond? All part of the planning, to beat them to the punch, sort of speaking. So, it's like, what I always used to do is build the field of dreams. If you build it correctly, they will come. You got to try to outthink the customer, or the prospect, and come back with those deliverables. So it's like, hey, is your company, can you do this or whatever? Instead of going back and saying, you know what, let me think about that. I'll get back to you in a couple days. I've got to, dive deep and figure this out. But if the experience that you have on that planning is that you can outthink them by saying, okay, if this customer asked this question, do we have the tools in place? Do we have manpower, whatever, to combat what he's asking? And that's the whole thing of being a good leader and figuring out before it's asked. Because if you can't deliver that right away, guess what that prospect's going to do? He's going to go after a service provider that has those tools, that can answer those questions, and you're going to be left high and dry. So it's outthinking the thinker, sort of speaking. So that's the way that I kind of do it. Again, it all really comes down to experience and being in that seat and understand what's the possibilities. What are they going to say? So you can plan out your response. And then this way you can relate that to your team as the what if scenario. Well, listen, if you're making those cold calls and you happen to get this question, here's how you're going to answer it.
As rebuttals, yeah. And you want it to come as natural, right? And that's why I feel like I've always kind of said, that's why I've always said, like, storytelling is one of the best tools that a salesperson can have. And like when you get an objection, and we'll talk about this week, from your customer and prospecting, but it's like, you don't want to go through a Rolodex. It's like, okay, they said this, okay, let me go through my Rolodex and figure out what they're trying to say. It's like, no, just let that and that comes with role playing and training and things like that. And
yes.
Yeah, and making sure that you're actually able to do that. I like what you said, because it always kind of comes down to like staying in your lane, right? Because I remember when I was at the first company that I kind of worked at, I wasn't going to sell dump trucks. I wasn't going to sell like hopper trucks. It just wasn't in our wheelhouse of what we did, right? There was certain niches and there's certain, like, obviously vehicle types and things like that. So become a master of that and understand your planning before you kind of like go after everybody. And we'll talk about that next week. But, when we're looking at the playbook and everyone's kind of sharing with each other, your operations playbook, what does the operations playbook kind of look like, outside of like the actual prospect itself?
On your business or the customer's side?
Both. Let's hit it with both. So let's start with the
it really and I asked that because every shipper is different than every than all the others, right?
Yep.
So you have to figure out that first and foremost. How are they coming at you? What are they doing? How are they doing it? So that you can create the plan, to go back to them, with your experience or what you've been doing. And again, what you said was critical, is that niche, that mode. So the higher probability is if they ask those questions in your mode, in your niche, you're going to be able to respond with the plan of how to attack to help him to be successful and to meet or exceed his expectations or her expectations. So it really all depends. That's why you have to be a good listener to plan. Listen more, talk less, sort of speaking, to understand that. So
I love that you said that, because I was actually going to bring this on Friday, but since you actually brought that word up, I read something yesterday was that, the word, you got to be an active listener, because listen and silent have the same words in them, so if you kind of like factor listen and silent, just be silent and understand. And as we're kind of talking here, we're talking about playbooks and things like that. I know myself, when I kind of got out of training, my playbook was essentially intangible, having a notebook, but the other one that helped me as well was a CRM. Right. And some people use CRMs, some people don't use CRMs, right? But I think a CRM kind of what you get to visualize it every single day. And you get to put, before you even make that call, you kind of put your input, the companies you're going into, the research that you've kind of done and everything like that. How important is a CRM set before you actually make that first call, Jeff?
Well, now again, and I keep on saying it, you know, I'm going to say, I'm not a sales guy, but I have the experience in that because I touch pretty much everything from cradle to grave in the logistics. So I come across it more on a logistics side, but I do know about CRMs. I have used them, and I had a good boss and a leader that helped me when I was a client development. A executive account manager and client account manager. And what we did with the CRM is that we had birthdays, the key people, the company, the notes. You put that all in there so that you have references. Again, that's the plan. Okay. So you're looking at what mode, what niche you're looking at. You're going through whatever trade magazines or places you can find prospects, and you start jotting everybody down, right? And now you're building your portfolio, who the calls you're going to go out to. Now you have their background knowledge on it, the products, where they ship, their facilities, and all of that. So this way, you have the playbook already created. So when you make that phone call, now you can take additional notes on that. Hey, what do you like to? Oh, you like football? I love football. How about those Falcons? Boom, he loves the Falcons. You put that down there, so that you can bounce back on that previous conversations and bring that up instead of going right for the meat and potatoes and thinking about moving freight and all of this. Now you open up the conversation, and with the CRM, whoever else has access to that or admin capabilities, they can look into the conversations and when the last call was made and so forth and so on that. So it's key. And there's so many different CRMs out there, as you well know. It's just selecting what works best for you. I would say if you're going to use a CRM and starting out, I would choose the one that's most user friendly. Because you're concentrating on making those calls and getting clients on board. Why get something that's really complicated unless
you don't want
before,
you got to get something user friendly and user interface. It's something that people don't want to spend their time in the CRMs, wasting time when they could be doing other things. And I love that you said that, because I know for myself, when I look at my CRM, I look at it and there's always about it. I look through the companies and I'm like, okay, well, they're in this space, and then you're automatically thinking, like, sometimes as you're kind of talking about the guy with the Falcons and stuff like that, everybody knows I'm a dog person. Like I literally closed an account yesterday because I started off an email asking if I could pet their dogs, just as a joke, because I know that they have dogs and stuff. But with that being said, I've spent so many times at like pet stores specifically writing companies down, talking to the store managers about like, what do you guys like about this? What are other people saying about, let's say, the kibble or the toys or the products? And that's where you kind of become an SME. And I think when you're looking at a CRM specifically and building your playbook, figure out your niche, and at least figure out your niche is something that you're comfortable with, or something that that you can talk about it for like pretty educated about it. Because hey, I'm not into like I've always kind of said, I'm not into, like, let's say, like gas cylinders or like anything hazmat. I wouldn't go make my phone call to customers who do hazmat, because I would look like an idiot. I would look like I don't want to have to put my customer on mute and then be like, hey boss, this is can you help me with this, right? But you got to kind of stay in your lane and then scale up. Jeff, you always talk about niches, but I want you to talk about it now. Like, what would you kind of do for a playbook for your niches? Some tips and tricks for them.
Basically, I would write down everything that I would want to know about that organization. Not talking anything about freight, the issues. Try to get him to expose the issues that's happening on site, because I love that kind of stuff. I mean, that's my passion, uncovering those type of issues without saying, I got capacity, got the best rates. They don't want to hear that kind of stuff. It's the other stuff that's more important to them. So when you start talking their language, they listen more, and say, listen, whatever you want to say at the end, say, listen, love the conversation. I'd love to have a follow-up call. How does next week look? And if that doesn't work for you, I'll work my schedule around yours. Send me a few dates, a few times, and we'll go from there, And if you really have a really good conversation, again, listen to the tone in the voice. you're going to realize whether or not you're actually going to get that phone call or that email based on your discussions. So, do a lot of homework. That's all part of the plan. Do a lot of homework. Get on the same playing field. Don't be on a football field when you should be on a baseball field.
I love that. That's exactly that. That's the best analogy that you can take, right? Because it's really important to, like you said, you find out what your niche is and stay in your lane, and become that expert and research, and don't get caught up in research so much. And we'll talk about it prospecting, because I don't want to get into like phone calls and stuff like that. But you don't want to get that like paralysis of like research paralysis. Like you're on that website, you're checking all this stuff, but nothing's getting done. You're not making that call. You're not sending that email, right? But know what to look for. And like you said, uncover those problems. And just to touch on that, Jeff, like that's actually one of my favorite part about talking to people is asking a question and just shutting up. Like I sometimes I'll put myself on mute, let them talk, even if it's awkward. Who cares if it's awkward silence? They're eventually gonna open up, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I can use this as an example. So I'm a night Columbus, and we had a meeting last night, and there was this guy there, and we just happened to have a conversation. I've known Ralph for probably about a half a year now, and then we just said, "Hey, what do you do?" Well, I'm the director of warehousing. I was like, "Oh, so you're in logistics and stuff like that." Sure enough, what he says, "Hey, what do you do?" I said, "Yeah, I've been in supply chain and logistics, blah 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 blah. Where are you located?" "Oh, I'm down, near Morristown." I was like, "Oh, cool. I'm up, blah, blah." And we started talking and everything. And next thing you know, he says, "Send me an email." This is a monster size chemical company that has 52 locations globally. And he wants me to meet the director of logistics there. From a simple conversation, just being cordial, not overspoken, just keeping it very, very simple, saying the right things. I'm not going to tell you what to say. But it's up to you. You need to just.
You got to figure it out. You got to figure it out.
You got to figure it out. And like I said, I don't make many phone calls. I don't. It's just the best kind of conversations you can have are the one-off conversations that's not expected, that really blossoms into something that's unbelievable. I mean, those are the kind of things that happen. I mean, I say it all the time. I'm just being damn honest here,
And I like that you said that, because, like you just have that conversation, and it actually brought up another thing that I was starting to think about. If you're somebody who's new and you come out of training and you're kind of planning stages, so you're ready to design your career. Look at what you do, Jeff, with like your North New Jersey supply chain luminaries, what's your name? But join those kind of clubs. Find those transport clubs in your area. Like get yourself familiar with the people in the door, because like if you could surround yourself with true professionals who've been in the industry, and you're not the smartest one in the room, you're gonna have one leg up. You're gonna be able to connect and have those conversations, like you just said. Hey, what do you do? Oh, this is what I do. And then you never know, those things are blossoming completely there. So I like that you said that.
That's why I made that. I mean, I wanted it to be much different than any other club out there. It's all knowledge based. It's peers helping peers and other people that are entering the business that wants to learn, to help them define their whole. I mean, seriously, where they can fit in. A lot of kids out there that are coming out of college, Ryan, they're so interested in logistics and supply chain, but they just don't know where to fit. They got their majors, they got their minors, but there's so many things involved. They come to the club, they start talking to people, and then the light goes off. Never thought of that. Tell me more. That's why I created this one. It's not, like I said, the good old boys club drinking beer all the time and all this other stuff. It's knowledge based. I want to help people.
And then you're helping people design their own playbooks as well, right? So that's the one thing, and you're able to do that. So design your own playbook, but being able to like assist with other people's playbooks, and that's what I think is like really, really important. And because we're all a collaboration at the end of the day, right? Whether we're planning. I'm always asking, I know we said yesterday, like the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? So always be kind of like a student and kind of want to get that help, whether it be clubs, asking other people in the industry. And that we do, I think like people as well should be in quite a bit, because like now I think, I don't know, within the last 2 years, I've really seen like a camaraderie, at least. Like I don't see competitors on LinkedIn. Like I really don't. I see collaboration. So I see a lot of young guys too as well. Like they're getting the industry and they're posting. They're getting feedback. They want to learn. They're having conversations with competitors that maybe back in the day it was said, no, you don't talk to a competitor. Like, why would you want to do that? But you do have those resources available that I think you got to take the initiative to actually want to learn and actually want to.
It's a give and take proposition. That's
Yeah.
what it is, you know. And I'll use myself as an example. Yesterday, right? I need a warehouse location in Sutter, Wyoming.
I remember seeing that.
In Wyoming. So I had to put a post out there to the peeps out there on LI saying, hey guys, I need some help. That's what it's all about, you know? And if somebody says, hey, I don't do a lot of stuff in New Jersey, do you have anything there? Reach out, man. I'll put a connection together. You know, if I can help you out, sure, you know. And sure enough, you know, I got a few responses and I'm going to have a meeting, you know? So it's like, if you don't know it, don't fake it to say something that you shouldn't say, you know. Reach out and find who does know it, you know. That's the whole thing, you know.
And that's the whole thing. It's about collaboration. Because like I could see the mindset where people are like, I don't want to ask for help because let's say my customer sees, you know, or my prospect sees, and they reach out and be like, oh, you're not the person. But at the end of the day, being able to be vulnerable and knowing what you're talking about, right? Because let's say you're brand new and you got this prospect and you're asking for help right away. It's gonna, and the customer sees that, then it's gonna be like, okay, well, maybe a little bit of doubt. But if you've built that relationship with them, whether it be a couple months, a year, or even like you've done a couple shipments with them, and you're asking for help on maybe like the 5th or 10th shipment, then they're going to be like, well, no, his track record is really good. Let him do what he's got to do, right? Because people might be afraid of that.
Correct. Yep.
From there.
Absolutely.
So it's tough. Yeah, you know, and I think, you know, when we're coming down to planning and things like that, we've got so some amazing topics, you know, and I personally can't wait to get into prospecting next week because that's kind of like my bread and butter that I definitely love. But I wish that we had these kind of episodes when I was in that stage in my career, you know, understanding that, hey, I just won't come out of training and just start banging calls. And people always kind of say, hey, bang out 1,000, but I'm calling a construction company first, then I'm calling a meat company the other one. It's like, no. I wish I had something like this. So I hope everyone's kind of finding value from this because, you know, we're giving away our playbooks. You know, that's what is amazing with us, right, Jeff?
Yep, absolutely. That's what we're here for. You know, to engage and help people to realize things that they may not have thought of. You know, I mean, I may learn some stuff from you, Ryan, because, you know, I'm not that cold calling animal that are out there that just need to be like hammering those phone calls, you know. Mm-hmm. And I it's because I was that shipper, man. I'm just being honest, man. I hated that stuff every single day. You know, so I mean, if I could help somebody to realize what they shouldn't be saying when they make calls to prospects in logistics and warehouses, I'll do it, man, because I freaking hated it. Like, I'm passionate about this. I hated those phone calls, not making them, receiving them. Terrible.
So you're both sides. Yes. So it's crazy to think about. So, you know, we're giving this value away for free, and there's so many other podcasts out there as well. So definitely, we want to thank everybody for coming out this morning. Hit the replay again at 12 and 3 p.m. Eastern time. Tomorrow, best day of the week. We've got the main man himself. I think we're gonna have Ken tomorrow. I think we've got to talk about that if we got Ken and Dean tomorrow. So. Yeah, I think we got Ken tomorrow. So either way, we're going to bring up some value. I know they go on live at 10 o'clock on Dat IQ Live on YouTube. I think they go on LinkedIn as well. So definitely check out that show to get some data. I checked out one of Dean's blog posts yesterday talking about the next 3 months. So definitely a great read from there. So anyways, everybody catch replay 3 p.m. Eastern time, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Join us tomorrow. Jeff, always a pleasure, brother. I know you've got Thursday, the relaunch. Like let's hear that about Hold My Beer as well.
Yeah, finally we got a system that's up that's going to be running supposedly good. We're going to find out, but that's actually going to be the real relaunch of Hold My Beer. So join us. That's all I can say. It should be a little bit better than last week. Disaster last week, but
well, there's no way to
we
go.
Pick up the pieces and move forward, though.
Well, you got to pick up that fumble and just like, you know, just to make sure you recover that and just go on offense, you know. So stick with the football team. So everybody, take care. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have an amazing day. Crush your sales.
Thanks.